tell me, how can I break into the bankruptcy business? I can't get the trustees in my area to talk to me. I live in the same neighborhood with the trustees in my area, and they still won't talk to me. They don't go to the networking function. They've been doing business with the same auctioneer for years and years and years. And I'm very thankful of that, because I don't mind talking in front of Rusty and Bo and even David about who I work for from the bankruptcy business, because I'm very secure in who I work for. Unless I really mess up, I'm not worried about you guys taking my business, because it's just not gonna happen. I mean, and I think Bo talked a little bit about that yesterday, that there's trustees in his area that he's having trouble getting in front of. And it's not necessarily always about the job that you do, because I, of course, do a wonderful job. But there's other auctioneers, and I'm not saying they do a bad job, but we're more technologically advanced. Bo's more technologically advanced, and like he said yesterday, he can't get in the door with these people. And let me tell you this. When my own company, which I'm just an agent for Rival Auctions, I don't own that company. I'm down here every day working. Don't draw a salary, work strictly by commission. And when agents in my company have seen the success that I have with the bankruptcy clients, they have tried to emulate that success. They have sent mass emails to bankruptcy trustees. They have sent letters to bankruptcy trustees. They've placed telephone calls to bankruptcy trustees. And believe it or not, as closed as we think this business is, they're booking some auctions, because there's trustee turnover out there. There's new trustees being appointed with the caseload that is out there right now. Bankruptcy filings are at an all-time high. They are approaching 2005, or maybe even exceeding 2005 levels, and y'all will see shortly why 2005 is a key date. The main trustee that I work for is also a Chapter 12 trustee. How many people know what Chapter 12 bankruptcy is? 2, 3? What is it, Ruth? Farm-related bankruptcy. Commodity prices are at an all-time high. Cattle, corn, soybean, wheat, cotton, all-time high, record high. And farmers are still filing bankruptcy at record levels. Why is that? I don't know. I really don't. It's just amazing to me, but the trustee that I'm working for is telling me he's getting 85 new Chapter 12s a month. 85. That's in addition to his regular caseload of about 150 Chapter 7s a month. Guys, I'm not bragging about this, but I want you to see something. You see that? That's my bankruptcy caseload right now. That's how many bankruptcy cases I have open right now. There's about 35 in there. It is an incredible task to keep up with that many. There is room in the bankruptcy auction industry for more auctioneers to be there. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. And like I said, this is a technical class. I'm going to commit the faux pas for instructors. There's going to be a lot of reading from the slides, because you need to know what's up here. It's important that you got that data in front of you and you carry it back with you. But I want you to ask me questions. Let's make it as interactive as we can. And then when we get down to the end, I'm going to start showing you how to prospect for bankruptcy auctions. I want y'all to tell me, though, what do you really want out of this class?
Be more successful.
More business, to be more successful, knowledge.
I'd like to be more well
We want
rounded.
to have the confidence of being able to walk in or get these folks on the phone and tell them you can help them.
Okay? Because ultimately, that's what we want to do at the end of the day. Is we want you to walk out of here with what you want. Because, committee, Mark, Tracy, Mark Danley, we can sit up here and try to figure out what we need to give you, but it's ultimately what you want to walk out of here with today, at the end of the day, know it. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna try to probably move through the technical aspect of it fairly quickly. You know, if I need to slow down a little bit, I'll slow down. And then let's get to the end of the class and let's start doing a little bit of internet research. And you got all my websites that I use in here. And then we'll start looking at some things. And that's where I really want some feedback, you know. If you want to know, hey, what do you say to a bankruptcy trustee? How do you get their attention? I'm going to tell you those kind of stories. So let me tell you first of all how I got into the bankruptcy business. The main trustee that I work for is a gentleman named Walter Kelly. He's in Albany, Georgia. He's a Chapter 7 trustee, Chapter 12 trustee in the Middle District of Georgia. Middle District of Georgia is Georgia has funky shaped districts. There's 3 districts in the state of Georgia. And you know, Georgia's kind of a rectangular shaped state standing on end. But the districts run from extreme southeast Georgia to extreme southwest Georgia to extreme southeast Georgia. And they run diagonally across the state. Rusty is probably right on the edge of the Middle District and the Southern District, because the southeast corner of the state where Rusty lives is the Southern District. The northeast corner is up around Rome and Chattanooga and that area, the northwest corner. And then Bo and I are in the same area, but there's multiple trustees in there. Bo's got trustees that he lives a lot closer to than I do. Let me tell you this one thing about bankruptcy business. I tend to find that it's all very local. You need to concentrate on what's in your area. Because one thing you're going to get out of it is, of all this case file that's in there, there's probably roughly about $4 million in sales total in that. $3 million of it in 3 cases. The rest of it is anything from, and that's all real estate, but the rest of it is anything from a $25,000 house to a $150,000 house. So you're going to do a lot of small business, so you need to try to keep that fairly local. To get into the bankruptcy business also, you're going to have to be willing to do some personal property. Our company does a lot of internet auctions. We developed our internet bidding platform for bankruptcy trustees because I actually started working for a new trustee out of Tallahassee that the only thing I ever got, the biggest asset I ever got to sell for her was a tire store liquidation. I can't tell you the number of boats and campers and motorcycles I had to repossess and sell to get that. And I finally looked up one day and said, this isn't for me anymore. So I'm going to shift my focus somewhere else. But it's a great way to break in. And if I had stayed with that trustee, I'm sure that at some point I would have gotten some real estate, but it was too cumbersome for me to personally stay there. But the way that I built a relationship with Walter Kelly is an interesting story. As I told you yesterday, I've always had a love for farming. I was raised on a farm, own a farm now, and I know a lot about farm equipment and the agricultural side. So I would do farm equipment appraisals. And when NAA came out with the GPPA designation, I was one of the first ones to go out and get it. When they did the expert witness class, I was one of the first ones to go to the expert witness class. In fact, I did it here at IU when they had a setting of you actually were in a mock courtroom with real attorneys and a real judge. And I mean, it was a tremendous learning experience for me. But I had the opportunity to do a appraisal on a group of assets in which Walter Kelly was actually representing the debtor in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Chapter 11s are large business bankruptcies. And the guy that he was representing was just a real scoundrel. I mean, he was just a crook from one side to the other. And when I went out to do his appraisal, I was following him in my truck, and he was located in southwest Georgia, and he farmed several thousand acres over about 3 counties. And just kind of get your visual image of that, we would go and look at a tractor and a piece of equipment in a field. I would inspect and appraise that piece of equipment or do my description on that piece of equipment. And then we would drive 15 miles. We'd be here, we'd drive 15 miles over here and look at a another piece of equipment. And then we drive 15 miles over here and look at another piece of equipment. And we drive over here and look at another piece of equipment. And we did that for a full day. And I wasn't familiar with the area, but late in the day I started saying, now wait a minute. We've been through this same intersection about 4 times today. But anyway, it got to be rather contentious, and I ended up having to go to court on that appraisal. And I was representing the creditor side, so I was on the stand. I had been under my direct examination. We're going to talk about some direct and cross-examination today. I had been under direct examination, and I'd done a pretty good job because I'm told I'm a fairly decent witness. And Walter came up to cross-examine me. And one of the things that I had done was we had appraised under, at one location, 2 cotton pickers and 2 peanut combines. Well, when we got there, we got out of the truck just like we had done all day, went over, I took my photographs, I recorded serial numbers, and I did my inspection. Well, lo and behold, we found out those weren't his cotton pickers. This guy had sold his cotton pickers in southern Louisiana for cash. Pocketed the money and got 2 of his buddies to come and put their cotton pickers under his shelter to defraud the creditor. Well, me recording the serial number caught that, of course. I mean, they were same model. That caught that, of course, and under cross-examination, Walter was trying to get me to say, he was leading that the debtor never represented that those were his cotton pickers, that I assumed that they were his cotton pickers. And he did. He never told me that those were his cotton pickers. But he never told me that any other piece of that equipment that we appraised that day was his. I had a list of equipment. I didn't have serial numbers on anything. I had a list of equipment, and every time we'd get to a piece of equipment, I'd record the serial number. So we did that, and he just kept hammering me under cross-examination that these cotton pickers did not belong to this gentleman. He never told you that. And he asked me, he said, Mr. Manley, tell us how you did the appraisal. I said, well, we were riding along, we drove up to this shelter, I got out, I took my photographs, I recorded the pictures, recorded my descriptions, and we got back in the truck and we left. And y'all, I got dinged for this one time in this class, but this is all public record, so I'm gonna say the name, it's just easier than me telling the story. Because, like I said, it's all public record. The debtor's name was Mr. Hare. Mr. Hare said, he didn't ever say anything. He asked me, he said, did Mr. Hare tell you that those were his cotton pickers? I said, no, sir. Mr. Hare never told you that. He said, well, why did you assume it? I said, well, all day long, we've been out looking at equipment. We did this, we did that. We recorded serial numbers. He never told me any of it was his. He said, but he never told you they were yours. I said, no, sir. I kept on and on and on. I won the argument. He could not prove his case that I had assumed. Like I said, our company had been trying to do business with this trustee for years. He called Tommy Rowell the following week and said, Mark Manley's one of the best witnesses I've ever seen. I want him working for me. That's how I got in the bankruptcy business. So it was a fluke, y'all. But doing that extra service, and that's what we're going to talk about, is doing the little things will make all the difference in the world. Because literally, right now, what I do is when this trustee is assigned the case, he sends me what the asset is, description of the asset, and a case number. Through his 341 hearings, and those are creditor hearings, that's not anything you really just need to know, you'll pick it up. He will question the debtor as to what they own. He has records of what debt level are. You know, in the declining market, he may have a house that shows that it's valued at $150,000 and the debt's $90,000. Well, on the surface, there appears to be equity in that, but we all know in this market there may not be any equity. So what he wants me to do is I take every one of those assets and I analyze them for him. And I come back to him and I say, yeah, it's worth selling. No, it's not worth selling. And I probably get 10 a week that I have to do like that. And of those 10 a week, probably one there's actually something to it. But let's talk about bankruptcy, let's get into it, and then like I said, you can ask some questions when we get in there. I'm one big on quotes, told you all that. Sir Winston Churchill, the pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, and an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Bankruptcy by the numbers, and these are actually 2010 numbers. Total case filings, business and non-business, on an average working day in 2010, 6,104 new cases were filed. This reflects an 8% increase over 2009. And that was taken from the U.S. Court Statistics site. Chapter 7, on an average working day during 2010, 4,366 Chapter 7 cases are filed and assigned to approximately 1,200 panel trustees, and about 150 of these are business cases and the rest are consumer cases. I'll get into telling you what panel trustees are, but that's who you want to work for. There's 1,200 of them out there, and I'm going to show you how to find the list of every one of them by your area. Chapter 7, among the Chapter 7 debt filings are 133 who owe at least $75,000 in credit card debt, 191 others who owe between $50,000 and $75,000, 32 with over $50,000 in medical debt, 18 who owe at least $500,000 in unsecured debt, 500 who are either retired or disabled, and a shocking number, 200 are over the age of 70. Chapter 11, on an average working day, about 53 Chapter 11 cases are filed. About every other day, there's a Chapter 11 filing in a publicly held company, and about every 7 working days, a Chapter 11 case involving a company with over $1 billion in assets. Chapter 13, on an average working day, 1,681 Chapter 13 cases are filed, and about a third of these debtors will eventually complete the repayment plan. Only a third of them. The rest will either have their cases dismissed or converted to Chapter 7. Each day, Chapter 13 trustees distribute about $18 million to creditors. This is bankruptcy by the numbers, as I call it. In 2005, there was massive bankruptcy reform, so there was over 2 million cases filed, and they were all done at the end of the year of 2005 before those laws took effect. But you can see those numbers have just been drastically climbing since that time. What is bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is a non-technical term for the legal state of insolvency, and insolvency is another term used to describe a firm or an individual that is failing financially. Generally, it means that a firm's liabilities exceed its assets and that it is unable to satisfy its obligations as they come due. Purpose of bankruptcy: to give an honest debtor a fresh start in life by relieving the debtor of most debt, and to repay creditors in an orderly manner to the extent that the debtor has property available for payment. There's a key word in that first section. Anybody know what it is? Honest. Honest. Of those cases that are in there, I promise you 75% of them represent some sort of dishonest dealings. One of the biggest scams going right now is the illegal transfer of assets from bankruptcy, from debtors into family members, other individuals' names. And the trustee that I work for has an incredible method of finding these assets. In fact, I'll tell you, he uses LexisNexis to do it. I don't know how he does it, I just know that's what he does. And he is renowned for being able to do it. He called me Thursday afternoon with a case that has 430 acres of farmland in it, free and clear, that a farmer transferred to his daughter's name 2 years and 1 month prior to him filing bankruptcy. You know what's significant about 2 years?
Statute of limitations.
Used to be the statute of limitations, but his attorney made a big mistake. They recently extended the statute of limitations to 4 years. It has gone from 6 months to 2 years to 4 years, very in a short period of time. So there is nothing preventing him from going in, seizing this 430 acres of land free and clear, and guess who's gonna get to do the auction on it? So, I mean, it's a pretty sweet deal. And y'all,
What system does he use, you said, Lexus?
Lexus Nexus.
Real expensive. Very expensive. It's a law. It's
But-
law libraries.
Having said that, there are a lot of good and honest people that file bankruptcy, and the system functions correctly for them. The history of bankruptcy is from medieval Italy, and the original term is bancarrota. It actually stands for broken bench. Back in medieval terms, if a business person was not able to pay their debt, their workbench was broken. That was the punishment that they had to receive. Bankruptcy became official in 1542 under Henry VII. In 1800, the United States Congress enacted the first American bankruptcy law, and it was temporary. It was not a permanent law. 1898, U.S. Congress with the Chandler Act, bankruptcy became permanent with the Act. It's known as the Act. 1938, U.S. Congress replaces the Chandler Act with the Wagner Act. 1979, U.S. Congress enacted the current federal law establishing the modern bankruptcy code, which brought chapters 11 and 13 into being. And in 2005, United States Congress enacted the Bankruptcy, Abuse Prevention, and Consumer Protection Act. I think it was October of 2005. If you saw those 2 million filings, that's the reason that that happened. And what that actually did, one of the biggest things it did was it brought about credit counseling. Now, anyone that files for bankruptcy has to go through credit counseling. It built a whole new industry in the United States is what it did, consumer credit agencies. All right, an overview of the bankruptcy chapters. This is where we're going to talk about what they are. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is a liquidation proceeding available to consumers and businesses. Those assets of a debtor that are not exempt from creditors, and we're going to talk about exempt assets, are collected and liquidated, they're reduced to money, and the proceeds are distributed to the creditors. A consumer debtor receives a complete discharge. That's what a person is wanting under bankruptcy, is discharge from the debt under Chapter 7, except for certain debts that are prohibited from discharge by the bankruptcy code. A trustee is appointed to take over the property. Any property of value will be sold or turned into money to pay the creditors. You may be able to keep some personal items or personal real estate depending on the law in the state where you live and applicable federal laws. And Chapter 7 may be voluntary or involuntary. Is there any Florida residents in here that do auctions?
I promote them.
I know you do. Florida has some unique homestead laws. A person basically cannot lose their home to bankruptcy in Florida. And that's something that you all need to keep in mind, is that bankruptcy, I just told you, is a federal law. It will vary greatly by regions of the country, by the way the regions interpret the law. So everything that I tell you today may not be applicable in your own area, but it's the basis for it. Chapter 11. Chapter 11, bankruptcy provides a procedure by which an individual business can reorganize its debts while continuing to operate. The vast majority of Chapter 11 cases are filed by businesses. Chapter 11 may be voluntary or involuntary. The debtor, often with participation from creditors, creates a plan of reorganization under which to repay all or part of its debts. This is mostly used by businesses. In Chapter 11, you may continue to operate the business, but your creditors and the court must approve a plan to repay the debt. The creditors committee is made up of the 7 largest creditors. There is no trustee unless the judge decides that one is necessary. If the trustee is appointed, the trustee takes control of the business and property.
Wow.
If you can get into a Chapter 11 case where there has a trustee been appointed, there's generally going to be an auction in that case, because some kind of wrong dealings have happened. Chapter 12, once again, we talked about is the farmer bankruptcy. It allows a family farmer to file for bankruptcy, reorganizing the farm's business affairs to repay all or part of the farm's debts and continue to operate. Chapter 12 is one of the few forms of bankruptcy that is strictly voluntary. You cannot be forced into Chapter 12 bankruptcy. You can be forced into Chapter 11, you can be forced into Chapter 12, but you cannot be forced, Chapter 11, Chapter 7, you can be forced into, but Chapter 12, you cannot be forced into. It actually has some other very disturbing tendencies about it as well. Typically, a debtor cannot ever dismiss their own case, but in Chapter 12, a debtor can dismiss their own case, and they can actually dismiss it, turn it right back around and refile it if they don't like what's going on in the case. It's one of the tactics that's used by Chapter 12 attorneys to drag out cases. Yes?
What would a farmer be defined as? Like if I have a little farm on the side, is that just allow me?
I think you would, to pass the test of being a farmer, you would have to derive a significant amount, probably the largest portion of your income would have to be derived from the farm. One of the things that bankruptcy attorneys do, and one reason I think that bankruptcy attorneys, and bear in mind, I'm not talking about trustees, but bankruptcy attorneys are an extremely good source of business. The best bankruptcy attorneys are tremendous stall agents. That's all they do. They want to drag that case out as long as they possibly can. I will tell you this also right now, and I'd love to hear feedback from those of you that are doing bankruptcy auctions. I typically find from the day that I have a case assigned to me until the day that I cash my commission check is about a 12-month period on average. Not because of it takes that long for me to get paid, but it literally takes that long to work things through the legal system. And the bigger the case, the longer it's going to be. Some of these short cases, they're probably 120, 150 days. David, what do y'all see?
That's probably about 120 days.
Yeah, and some of the small stuff.
Yeah, no less.
Right, no less. But the bigger the case, the more legal wranglings there are going to be, and then you really, on those good sized cases, you could even be over a year getting anything done. Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is called the wage earner bankruptcy. It's used primarily by individual consumers to reorganize their financial affairs under a repayment plan that must be completed within 3 to 5 years. To be eligible for Chapter 13 relief, a consumer must have regular income and may not have more than a certain amount of debt as set forth by the bankruptcy code. And that actually varies. That level of debt fluctuates with what the economy is doing. You can usually keep your property, but you must earn wages to have some other source of income, of regular income, and you must agree to pay part of your income to the creditors. The court must approve your repayment plan and your budget. A trustee is appointed and will collect the payments from you. Your payments, you pay the creditors, and they make sure that you live up to the terms of repayment plan. Chapter 13 is strictly voluntary. That's the other voluntary one that I was telling you about. A lot of people attempt to do Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it really is fairly tight in what you can do, because you have to earn money. You have to pay that money to the creditor, to the trustee. Then the trustee pays the creditors. The trustee's collecting a fee off of doing this. There's not a lot of auction business to be had in 13 cases. I've been in courts before where we'd be working on a Chapter 7 case where there may be a house involved. And one of these cases where the husband files bankruptcy, deeds the house to his wife, they've got a low amount of debt. One of the tricks that they try to use, they'll file a Chapter 7 to keep the house in her name, get rid of all the credit card debts that are in his name. We get into court when he finds out we're about to sell the house, and then all of a sudden, he'll want to convert it to a Chapter 13 case. The courts normally will see those kind of things and won't allow them to happen. There's a pile of Chapter 13 cases that get converted to Chapter 7. So they go from not being able to make the payments into a total situation of just a liquidation. Here are the debt limits as of April 1st, 2010. You can have up to $360,000 of unsecured debt, or $1,081,000 of secured debt. So you see the levels are actually
Unsecured.
fairly high as to what you can owe to be in chapter 13. Chapter 9, it's bankruptcies of municipalities, and there were 7 filed in the US in 2010. There was some in South Carolina, Texas, Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, and Idaho. Has anybody ever even heard of